It's finally time for us to continue with the next topic from the module Windows Server 2016, and this topic is related to virtualization with Hyper-V. Hello friends, this is Nick from NLB Solutions, and today I'm going to continue with the series of Windows Server 2016, and my train stop is going to be on Hyper-V virtualization. Of course, we all know that virtualization nowadays is a huge part of every single organization, and most probably if you are still not using virtualization, this is a thing that you need to offer to your managers and to your bosses in general. Virtualization can help you to improve and consolidate all the resources that you are currently using, and you can improve significantly the resource utilization on your machines. Of course, not all servers, not all applications can support virtualization, but this is a good choice for a wide range of roles, features, and applications for you to improve. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to install the Hyper-V role, and I'm going to use the domain controller that I've installed in previous videos. Of course, this is not a good idea if you are doing this in production. Every single major role should be placed on a different host server, and this is of course recommendation from Microsoft. So as I have Active Directory here, it's not going to be a wise idea for me to install Hyper-V, but as I'm using this as a lab environment, this is going to be just fine. So what you need to do is you need to open your server manager and go to Add Roles and Features. Of course, this can be utilized, this can be successfully done through PowerShell as well. So if you want to learn more PowerShell, of course, you can check the Install Windows feature PowerShell command cmdlet. So I'm going to click next, select the server that I want to install the role on, select next, and right there you can see the Hyper-V mentioned as a role. So I'm going to select this one. It's going to ask me to add the additional management tools and GUI tools for managing Hyper-V. I'm going to add the features. Just wait for the wizard to finish checking the prerequisites, and just going to click next. I'm not going to install any other features on this machine. So of course, you have a small summary of what is the Hyper-V role and how this is going to be used and deployed on your system, so you can read through it. Of course, if you have additional network cards, additional cards connected to your server, they will be populated here. So this is the time where you can create or dedicate a network card for your virtual switches, but I'm going to create a virtual switch next, so I'm not going to select this. And of course, you can configure live migration, so you can migrate virtual machine from another Hyper-V host. Of course, all these features can be configured after the installation. This is just a thing that you can do prior, but I'm going to just install the defaults. Everything will be on default and just will confirm the installation of the role. Of course, when the wizard finish, it will require for you to restart the server, because the hypervisor will be installed on top of the hardware, and it's going to need to configure things prior to the boot of the operating system. So I'm going to click install, and while I'm waiting for the feature to be installed, I will provide you with few new features that are added to the Windows Server 2016, because this is actually the topic that we are discussing, the new things, what is new in Windows Server 2016. So Microsoft made few improvements in the Hyper-V, and they according to me, look very good. For example, they have a host resource protection, and what this means is that it prevents the virtual machine from monopolizing all the resources on the host. So what this means is you cannot suffocate the host itself. You cannot provide all the resources so that the host will stop completely. So this is a nice protection that can be enabled if you need, and it will say that you are not able to provision any virtual machines, any more virtual machines, if the resources on the host are not enough. Another huge improvement is the nested virtualization. This, of course, is still only for test and education environments. It's not recommended to be done in production environment. And what nested virtualization means is that you can install virtual machine that can become a Hyper-V host, and within that Hyper-V host you can create additional virtual machines, and I'm going to show you in this video how you can configure that. Another thing that it's really important is the shielded virtual machines, and what this new feature allows you to do is to encrypt virtual machines so they can be more secure, and they can be only accessed by administrators to configure them. And one small thing, last thing that is really important is Windows PowerShell Direct. And what this means is that on every single host, every virtual machine can be accessed through PowerShell, through the host. And it doesn't require for you to have even a network card connected to that virtual machine. So it's only enough for the virtual machine to be working on this Hyper-V host, and from the host, from PowerShell, you will be able to access and configure the virtual machine through PowerShell. So I'm going to restart my host server, and I'm going to continue with configuring the next steps, configuring the virtual machines on this host. So let me close the window. It's saying that a restart is pending in order for it to finish. So I'm going to just restart my host server. I will pause the video and continue when the host is up and running. Now that my host is up and running once again, I'm going to open my Hyper-V manager from my server manager, and I will just pin the Hyper-V manager to my taskbar so I can access that in a faster way. So when you have the Hyper-V manager console, the first thing that you want to do is create a virtual switch, and this can be achieved by using the virtual switch manager. And in there, under the virtual switches, you have the option to create one of the three, or if you want you can create multiple, but you have three options: external, internal, and private. And when you click through the options, of course, you can see that the description changes. What this means, the external one means that it's going to share the same network card with your physical host. And the external switch will provide internet access to the virtual machines as well. The internal switch will connect your physical host with all the virtual machines that are using this internal switch, but they won't be able to go outside and browse on the internet. And the private virtual switch will allow connectivity between the virtual machines only, and the host will not be able to see them when you try to ping or anything else. Of course, you can use the PowerShell Direct to connect to the virtual machines, or you can use the console, but they will be isolated. So for this purpose, I'm going to create an internal switch, which I'm going to name internal vSwitch. Okay. And of course you can configure VLAN if you want or anything else, but for this video, I will only need the internal switch to be available for me. So I will lose a connection to my virtual machine just for a moment, but and this is because it's currently creating another virtual network card on my server. So if I go to my network and sharing center, I will see that I have another internal vSwitch vEthernet that has been created. And if I go here, I will be able to see that I have another Hyper-V virtual Ethernet adapter created. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to create a virtual machine, and I'm going to use this virtual machine to create another Hyper-V host, and I'm going to test and confirm that the nested virtualization is indeed working. So I'm going to name this NOB host 01 because I don't have any other machines currently being hosts. And of course you can choose to store the virtual machines in different location, which is recommended, because at the moment for this server I only have one partition. But if you have the Hyper-V role, it's quite important for you to separate, and this stands for every single important role, to separate the role from the operating system, just in case. So I'm going to leave the defaults for now, and I'm going to select generation 2 virtual machines, because generation 2 virtual machines allow me to use more newer features, newer things that Microsoft implemented. For example, I can use the VHDX file format for my virtual hard disks. So if you want to, because I don't want to make this video long, if you want, you can read more about generation 1 and generation 2 difference. I'm going to assign a startup memory of 4 GB, and you can use dynamic memory as well. This is a good feature if you want to save memory, RAM, on the virtual machine that you are creating. What this will do is it will start up with 4 GB of RAM, but when this RAM is not needed, a driver within the virtual machine will start expanding and will lower the RAM being used on the virtual machine, so it will be free for the host. This of course is not going to be recommended for, let's say, another host which is a virtual machine, but for any other virtual machines it can be quite a good solution for saving RAM. I'm going to assign the internal vSwitch that we've created, and in here I'm going to create a new VHDX virtual disk, and I'm going to make this virtual disk, for example, let's say 40 gigs. Okay. Next, I'm going to install operating system later, and I'm going to click next and finish to create the virtual machine. Now that we have our virtual machine, I can connect to it, of course, and I can power on the virtual machine. Of course, the virtual machine itself won't be able to load anything because it's a blank virtual machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install operating system on this virtual machine, and after I'm done installing Windows Server 2016, I'm going to show you how you can enable nested virtualization on this host, and we'll test and confirm that this functionality is indeed working. So I finished installing my host 01 virtual machine, and you can see right here that host 01 is currently running as a virtual machine on my Hyper-V server. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to try and enable the Hyper-V feature, and we'll see if this is going to be available for me. I assume that I will receive an error message saying that because I'm using a virtual machine, I cannot install the role, but let's see if this is going to be available. Okay, you can see that it's saying Hyper-V cannot be installed. The processor does not have required virtualization capabilities. So this is a thing that up to Windows Server 2012 R2 was the case. You were not able to install a Hyper-V role on a virtual machine. But with Windows Server 2016, Microsoft enabled this feature, and this is, again, I'm saying that it's only for testing and development and education. It's still not recommended to do this in production environments because it's still not final, and I assume that Microsoft are going to release the final version in the next Windows Server releases, maybe in 2016 R2. So what Microsoft provides us, it's a script that will enable the nested virtualization for a specific virtual machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down my virtual Hyper-V server, and then I'm going to open a PowerShell. Let's open PowerShell as administrator. Yes. I'm going to close the other window, and you can see that on my desktop I've downloaded a script that you can download as well from Microsoft. This is for enabling the ability for a virtual machine to become a host, also known as nested virtualization. So I'm going to execute this script. Let's see if that would be successful. Let's go to users, and then NIC, and then desktop. And on my desktop, I need to execute enable nested vm.ps1, and then specify the VM name, and the VM name is going to be NLB host 01, and I'm going to press enter. So you can see straight away that it's saying that the virtualization extensions will be enabled, and optionally enable MAC address spoofing. So input yes to accept and N to cancel. So I want to enable this. And would you like to enable MAC address spoofing? So what MAC address spoofing is, it's usually, as you know, the MAC addresses are assigned addresses, unique addresses, assigned to every single network interface. And what MAC address spoofing allows us is to change this factory assigned address so that it can be different from the factory one. So I will enable this feature as well and press enter. And this is it pretty much. So now, when I again open my virtual machine and power on the virtual machine, I will wait for the operating system to fully load. And the next thing that I want to do, instead of using the GUI to enable the Hyper-V role, I'm going to use another feature that is new, and this is the PowerShell Direct option. So what I'm going to do is, using my PowerShell that I have on my current host, I'm going to enter a PS session, and I'm going to specify the VM name, and the VM name is NLB host 01. And it's going to ask me to provide credentials. Press enter, and I will wait for the VM session to connect. And now you can see that I'm currently connected to NLB host 01 with PowerShell. And you can see on the back my virtual machine is running, but I'm not connected to it. So the next step I want to do is I'm going to enable and install the Windows feature Hyper-V. So I'm going to use install Windows feature. Okay, and I'm going to specify the name of the feature, which is Hyper-V, and I'm going to include all sub features and include management tools, and then I'm going to ask the server to restart. So let's see if this will be install Windows feature. I misspelled the letter there. I must be hungry. It's getting late and I haven't eaten anything, so I guess I misspelled something else. So after puzzling my head around on what was the mistake that I've made, I've decided to not trust my writing, but instead to use the tab, which is the a good thing to complete the command. So let's see if that will complete successfully. So it's currently going to collect data about the server, and we'll see if this will continue without any errors. So it has started the installation of the Hyper-V feature on the virtual machine, and after the installation of the feature it should restart. So let's hold for a moment and see if this is indeed going to happen. And after the virtual machine is up and running once again, what I want to do is I'm going to then log in to that virtual machine, and we'll see if the Hyper-V role is enabled, and I will try to create another virtual machine within the virtual machine so we can confirm that the nested virtualization is indeed running as expected. So you can see on the background the virtual machine started the restart process, and it's going to install the hypervisor. So it's going to take few more moments to complete this operation, but let's see if this is going to be successful. So after completing the installation, it requires another restart on the host. Now that my server is fully booted, I'm going to log in using my administrator credentials. And as soon as we see the server manager, I'm going to confirm that I have the Hyper-V role installed. It's still taking some time to load up the settings. But right here on the left side, if I have the Hyper-V enabled, it should appear. So let's wait for a few more moments. Okay, there it is. So I'm going to, just to confirm that everything is enabled, I can see that the Hyper-V is installed, which means that if I go ahead and open my Hyper-V manager, I will be able to see NLB host 01, and on this host, I'm going to pin this to the start the taskbar. So you can see that on my virtual machine that I've created currently on my NLB DC01, my virtual machine, which is NLB host 01, I've enabled nested virtualization. I've installed Hyper-V on this virtual machine, and on this virtual machine I can now install and of course create virtual machines. So I'm going to name that test 1. Next, I'm going to select generation 2. Leave the memory, leave this. I just want this to be as quick as possible, so we can just confirm that the virtual machine is running. So it's currently creating the virtual machine, creating the disks, and there you go. So if I connect to this virtual machine and powered it on, so the start succeeded, and straight away you can see that there is currently no operating system for the virtual machine to run. So you can see that the nested virtualization is indeed working. This is again for only for testing purposes, and only for development. So this is still not ready to be deployed. So this pretty much wraps up the Hyper-V tutorial that I wanted to show you within Windows Server 2016. We've enabled the Hyper-V role on a server running Windows Server 2016. We've created a virtual switch. We've created a virtual machine, and which next I installed another Windows Server 2016 on that virtual machine, then enabled nested virtualization, and then installed the Hyper-V role on my virtual machine. If you have any questions, of course, you can always put them in the comment section below, and I will try to answer them as soon as possible. If you like the video, you can always hit the like button and subscribe to NLB Solutions, where I'm going to continue to release interesting videos of new stuff related to Windows Server 2016. Of course, if you don't like the video, you can always hit the don't like button and just put a comment in the section saying what can be improved, so I can improve in the future. This was Nick from NLB Solutions. Thank you very much for viewing, and see you soon.